It was a terrible experience. Don't wish that upon anyone. But for me, it never hurt my passion for esports.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Minds of Media. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and today's guest is a marketer, the best aggregator among all aggregators, and co-founder of Juked, which at this time has raised around $350,000 for their public investment. Please let me introduce Ben Goldhaber, or as some of you might know as Fish Sticks. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Blake. I got a chance to tune into some of your previous interviews and really like how you run these things. So I was more than happy to jump on.
That's good. That's good. You know, I always wonder if people ever check out, and like I give them like information like, hey, you might want to check out some of these interviews, because I try to do a really different interview style than anyone else. So I'm really happy you actually watched, so that way you're not going to be blindsided. So I do like to start the show off fairly easy, though, before we get into like maybe deep and personal and things that are happening about your life. One of the cool things I found out about you when I researched about you is you are a very big fan of Japan, which I find awesome, because I was actually born in Japan, and I was really jealous when I read through your Japan tour guide of the incredibly amazing things that there are to do there. Is that some place that you've ever thought about like living or going to, or is it just some place that you just visit and like to visit?
I fantasize about moving to Japan at least once a week. It's actually, believe it or not, Japan has this reputation of being a really, really expensive country.
Yeah.
But that's kind of overblown. It's not actually true. You can own a good piece of real estate in somewhere like Kyoto for like a couple $100,000 compared to where I live right now, which is San Francisco.
You live in San Francisco.
It's so like, whoa, let me think about this for a second.
Yeah.
No, I think I'd love to spend more and more of the year there every year. My goal is to maybe be there for a month every year if I can.
So what's stopping you from moving now? I mean, if anything, COVID has probably shown that you don't actually have to leave your house ever. If you really don't want to, which is terrifying and awful. But I mean, when's the move to Japan happening? Because I will say, I've looked at prices in LA when I was doing esports stuff there, and it is insanely expensive. And San Francisco is just as bad, if not worse. So I could fully see a move to Japan. What's stopping you?
Time zones. I mean, I am running my own company now, and I'd love to eventually, believe me. Like I hope that it happens one year, but right now I've got a company to run, and that kind of precludes that big thing like that.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, the company is probably pretty important. Actually, it's funny you mentioned startups, because that was another thing when I was going through kind of like your career. You and startups are like, you're like a married couple. You really enjoy startups.
Well, I mean, yes, but I sort of lucked into this crazy situation that I found myself in. I was able to join the Justintv team before the launch of Twitch back in 2011. But that was more of an accident or just freak occurrence than anything. I mean, I was obsessed with esports at the time, but I was never like, I'm going to go join an early stage startup. It just so happened that I was in San Francisco and they were trying to pivot to esports, and one thing led to the next.
We're gonna have a lot of questions on that I don't think you've been asked before. So I know you are jumping way ahead, but it's okay. It's okay. So one of the cool things is you grew up in Berkley, California, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you grew up in Berkley, California. What is that like growing up in Berkley, California? Like what kind of lifestyle did you grow up in there?
Yeah, I will fully admit that there is a serious sense of superiority that pretty much everyone in the Bay Area has, because I mean, I truly love the Bay Area. You know, San Francisco in particular gets a bad rap these days, and for good reason. Gentrification, homelessness, rising costs. It's the most expensive place to live in the world, probably outside of like Hong Kong in terms of square footage. And there's a lot to hate, but what I love about the Bay Area is, I could say all the typical Silicon Valley stuff about the entrepreneurial spirit and everyone's go-getter, but everyone's extremely progressive as well. They're, I would say, very well-educated general populace. People, when I grew up in Berkeley, California, all of my friends were hippies and super liberal. But, our idea of a good time was to, chat about philosophy or whatever, maybe go up to one of the vistas overlooking Berkeley and maybe toke up a little bit, but talk about philosophy and
Yeah.
have that deeper kind of philosophical conversation. So growing up in Berkeley was amazing. The food's amazing. The people are really kind and really progressive, and really well educated, and that was a big part of my life growing up.
What did your parents do then growing up? Why were you in Berkeley to begin with? Like, what did they do?
Yeah, actually, my family is second, or I guess, yeah, second generation in the Bay Area. My mom's side is actually even further than that. So Oakland, Berkeley, I definitely have really deep roots here. And both my parents actually went to UC Berkeley in the 60s. So they were there during the civil rights kind of movement, during the Summer of Love in Berkeley, California. So I guess you can see where the hippie comes from.
Okay, so that brings me to some very interesting questions for today. So we're gonna segue a little bit here. So your parents, you mentioned being in the 60s, and then being part of Vietnam and stuff like that. What do they think about what's happening today? Do you ever have conversations with them about some of the political stuff that is going on today?
Yeah, it's super, super weird because all my parents and their friends kind of were in Berkeley in the 60s doing all the civil rights stuff. They traveled the world doing meditation. They are your quintessential hippies.
Yeah.
But half of them became Republican later in life, which is really, really confusing to me. I would say my parents are a very strange hybrid of still very liberal in some ways, but also very conservative in other ways. So it's actually not as you probably might expect. They're not super happy about what's going on right now.
Yeah.
My mom actually was an epidemiologist in a previous life. So she studied the spread of disease for many years. And she's pretty disappointed with the current state of affairs, to say the least.
I feel like that is probably a fair assessment of everything that's going on. So growing up, what did your parents do for work?
So also, one thing that you may have uncovered is I'm a triplet.
Yes, you have two brothers.
I've got two brothers,
Yep.
same age. We're all born at the same time. We don't have any other siblings, but
There's got to be some second difference, right? You're holding that over one another. Who is technically the oldest? Who's the middle? Who's the youngest?
I'm the youngest. I'm
Okay.
the youngest by minutes, not by years. So I think my mom kind of stopped working for the most part, in terms of a full-time job, just to take care of the kids, because there was three of us all at once. But she's always been involved in nonprofit work. She's been running the Claremont Canyon Conservancy, which is Berkeley Hills, making sure that doesn't catch on fire. The 91 fire almost burned down my family's house in Berkeley, in the Oakland Berkeley Hills. But my dad, I think I got a lot of inspiration from him growing up, because he's been an entrepreneur his entire life and is actually a very, very successful technology entrepreneur, writing both of the first two tech waves. So when personal computing was first developing in the 80s, he built a company which connected IBM Mac PCs with a single cable. So it was basically the first LAN network. And then in the dot-com boom in 99, he created an internet marketing company, which eventually went public on the New York Stock Exchange. So my dad has been involved in technology. He did a lot of venture capital throughout the years, built and sold companies, built and went public with companies. So safe to say that he had a really, really fruitful career in technology. And growing up, I was always I want to do business. I don't know what that means, but I want to do that.
Yeah. What was it like growing up for someone who is this entrepreneurial? Is he teaching you lessons? Is he being Ben, you have to learn that if you don't sell this for this amount, you could be anything like that?
Absolutely not at all. I mean, I think, again, I'm a millennial, and I think the stereotypical thing is every millennial's parents was you're special, you're amazing, whatever you do, you're going to be successful at. And that was kind of how me and my brothers grew up. Okay. That was how we were brought up. And no, I was never instilled, it was never oh, you should go do business, you should go be an entrepreneur. That was never really an expectation.
Okay. What were the expectations from your parents growing up? Did you have any? Like, was there minimum grade requirements? I see that happening a lot. Anything like that you have to do, like sports or anything like that?
I mean, honestly, not a lot. I think our parents were very, very accommodating and flexible for helping us drive towards our passions
Hmm.
as kids. I mean, I just had a super, super lucky childhood. First of all, having two brothers, same age,
Hmm.
was great.
Is that
Uh,
great?
but ha-
Is it really
oh,
great?
we got along famously,
Okay.
honestly. Yeah, we really did. We shared all the same friends. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little brother, so where he's 4 years difference than me. So I'm
Yeah.
the oldest, and so there was some things that are good, and then there's other things like you're my little brother, you're annoying. So, but being only minutes apart, I imagine that is that's got to be an interesting scenario. So, growing up, one of the interesting things that we'll kind of get into later is you actually went for a degree in environmental economics, which is a very interesting degree choice considering your current pathway, I would say, and where you're at. So, like growing up, what were the things that you were passionate about? What were things that you enjoyed to learn about? I know video games to some degree
Yeah.
came into play, very obviously. If it didn't, that would be really weird.
Yeah, no, being a technology focused family,
Yeah.
we got gaming consoles really early. I grew up with the NES, grew up with Sega. We had Game Boy, we had the Game Gear, the gigantic thing that took 17 batteries. So video games were always present in our lives,
Yeah.
and something that all three of us, me and my brothers, just fell into. I think we played Sonic 2 and beat it every day for about 4 years. Sonic 2 and Sonic 3. And then the N64 came out, and everything changed, because then it went from like playing Sonic, and of course we did play Zelda, we did play Mario 64, but Smash Bros, competitive games, beating the hell out of all of our friends. We had embedded practice partners in the house.
Yeah.
So we were like way better than pretty much all of our friends, which I later learned in life means absolutely nothing. You can still be terrible even though you're dunking on all your friends constantly. But yeah, video games. I really used to enjoy playing music a lot.
Really?
I used to play the drums, and I used to play the clarinet. Really, really enjoyed that in high school, especially. Played a lot of music. Those are some of the big passions. I mean, I did play sports, but I was never very good. I
Hmm.
played tennis, and I played football at school
Yeah.
at lunch, but never seriously.
Yeah, I actually played the clarinet too, growing up until I chopped off my fingers, and then you
Oh,
can't play the clarinet
oh,
anymore.
oh God.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I learned how to play guitar later on. So I mean, that's kind of cool. So, but yeah, no, clarinet was a fun instrument. I did you ever do like any bands or stuff, or did you mostly just do orchestra stuff?
I did jazz mostly. Yeah.
Okay, jazz is a
With
lot of
drums
fun.
as well. With drums as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool, interesting. So you're growing up, you're going through life, right? Like just everyday life. You're really big into video games. Um, you're getting towards college. What makes you think I want to go for environmental economics? Because it seems like such an odd degree to it's not like one of the big ones that you would think about like today. Like people are like, oh, I'm going to be an engineer or I don't know, something else like that.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to put yourself, first of all, in my shoes as a total hippie growing
Yeah.
up in Berkeley. That alone, like already I really love hiking. I really love nature. And, I think it just was in the water in the
Mhm.
Bay Area, but it was also a product of the time. This was, I was going into college when green tech was like a new term
Yeah.
that nobody was talking about yet. And, renewable energy and sustainability, obviously they're still really important today, but at the time, I think Al Gore was starting to talk about climate change, and
Yeah.
it was a really like attractive major, just from everyone's perception was like, this is where you're going to get a job.
Yeah.
But for me, I actually was passionate about it. I actually cared. I did want to save the world, and I was fully planning on getting, working in this space after college. Esports was a hobby, and it was, had been a hobby for about 10 years. Even at that time, I had been playing games competitively in organized league play for 8-9 years at the time. But no, I was fully planning on trying to save the world, and then took a left turn, and now I'm doing nothing like that. Yeah.
When did that moment change where you're like, I don't want to save the world anymore? Because there's got to be a moment where you're like, I just would rather do this than saving the world is good, but this is way cooler.
Actually, well, I guess there was a moment. It was when I got a job offer at Justintv. But yeah, just taking a step back, like I played games competitively for about a decade.
Yeah.
I played Tribes Vengeance, Tribes Ascend, Tribes 1.
You're a really big Tribes fan.
I was a really big Tribes guy for literally a decade, completely in a Tribes bubble. I didn't know anything about outside esports, but as live streaming technology was starting to emerge, this is 2007.
Yeah.
We saw the launch of Ustream, Justintv, Own3D, Livestream. All these platforms launched in the same year.
Yeah.
Because the technology just simply wasn't really viable prior to that period. And it instantly gave me access to everything that was happening in esports. So no longer was I in my Tribe/Quake bubble. I started finally break out towards Quake and enemy territory towards the end there. But all of a sudden I could see, oh, there's a StarCraft Brood War stream. Oh, there's a Street Fighter 4 stream. Oh, what is this game? StarCraft 2 is coming out. Oh my God, it's got 10,000 concurrent viewers, mind exploding numbers of viewers. Evo is happening. Oh my God, there's 20,000 people watching the stream. This is insane. I've never seen it. And I really, really became obsessed with not just following the games that I played and that I cared about, but Heroes of New Earth had a 12,000 concurrent. I've never played a MOBA. I've still never played a MOBA. Okay, that's a lie. I played League of Legends.
I was going to say, if you haven't played League of Legends, I would be very surprised.
One time against bots. So I really became like infatuated with following everything that was happening. And to this day, I can't tell you why this became such an obsession of mine.
Yeah.
But a couple of friends and I got together in about 2009, and we started working on a website called gamescast.tv,
yes,
which we eventually launched later that year, which aggregated streams from Ustream, Livestream, Own3D.
And that was with Matt Richards, right?
Yeah, Natcom and Grease Scotsman. I used to commentate Quake with those guys way back in the day. And I think it was Matt's idea originally to build this product. Grease was an engineer / coder. Matt did design. I did everything else for the company in terms of partnerships, marketing, etc.
Yeah.
We built that website. One thing led to the next. I got introduced to the Justintv team, and before that point, I had no aspirations to make esports a full-time career. Mm-hmm. Like I always thought it would be something that I did in my free time, but I never expected it to be my full-time career.
Okay, so as soon as you get the job offer, it's like, okay, well, I'll do this and see what happens. Is that basically what it was?
Yeah, I mean, it started as a short-term contract. I started at Justintv in early 2011, and it was like, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
I mean, I never really looked back. I think if you were in my position, you'd do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, when I got into esports, I was actually trying to shift. So I started out working in mental health, and then I shift over to esports is what I did. But I had planned. I was like, I will make this work. I will do something else in the meantime, and I will make this a hobby, and I'll do whatever I can. And if I can ever switch, I will switch. Which I don't blame anyone. So one of the things I want to ask you about Justintv, because you actually mentioned all of these different competitors, and I remember some of the, I want to say content wars is the best way to describe it. Were you around for some of that time with Justintv, with the content wars where they were trying to compete against, like Own3D was probably the biggest one that you guys were trying to compete against. Were you there for some of that?
Yeah, I was actually there for all of that. Really, I think the Justintv team had experimented just a little bit with gaming. Mm-hmm. But before I joined, they had not taken the plunge yet. So I was actually the first person hired at Justintv to focus solely on gaming. Yeah. And the reason why, by the way, that we were focusing on gaming is because Emmett Shearer was watching StarCraft 2 streams. So StarCraft 2, like literally is the reason that Twitch exists. and I've said that before, but no, I was there for that whole thing.
Okay. What was it? Because I imagine the behind the scenes of this thing has got to be, well, from what I've heard, tech in general is a very interesting behind the scenes. And I don't know how much the movies portray it up or play it up, everything that goes on, but you're also in this huge battle that ultimately leads to Own 3D gone and Twitch becoming the like god that it ends up becoming. Like after that, there wasn't really any other competition, and then Twitch just like exploded even more. So what was the behind the scenes like when you're dealing with this competition with Owned 3D behind the scenes? Is it really stressful? Is there things that you have to deal with? Are you guys having meetings like, oh my God, they did this, we have to do this? What was that like?
Short answer is yes to all of the above. It is probably somewhat how you imagine it, where every single day, we were competing for content acquisition. That was really my first role when I joined Justintv in the first place, because I did have connections to these different streamers, people who were producing esports content, tournament organizers. And my first job was content acquisition. Let's go get those people to join our platform. That's how we were going to grow 20% every single month for an entire year. That's how we did grow 20% every month for a year, is by adding all of these streamers to our to the platform. I think it's really important to remember some context. Back in 2010, 2011, you couldn't make any money streaming. YouTube, there was no partner program.
Nope.
It's like crazy to think this is not even 10 years ago. This is 9 years ago. And literally there was no such thing as a professional content creator on these platforms, because it just, you could not monetize. So, early on, I think the strategy that was the winning strategy for Twitch was, let's go make the content creators as happy as we possibly can. And then they'll bring their audience. And how do you make them happy? You give them fame, you make them feel loved, and you make them money. So those were the three principles that we really implemented to try and get everyone to switch to Twitch. And I think the give them love part was like, hey, we're a gaming platform. We're about games. Also important to remember, gaming was not cool in 2011. It was still a nerdy hobby that you didn't talk about. So we said, hey, we're a platform for gamers. And that alone was just like it was a bat signal to every gamer who felt like there was, they had to hide their passion to just, okay, this is the platform. Give them fame. We had the front page of Twitch, which, we could use to promote people. We had our social media channels. We had awesome PR capabilities, and then make them money. We launched the Twitch partner program where people could start to put the subscription button on their channel. Back then, that was really the launch of Twitch, was the launch of the partner program as well. And that was the first time that streamers could actually monetize their audience in a really, really meaningful way. So those three things was like the core strategy that just helped us win in that space.
Do you have any stories like trying to get a content creator or fighting with Owned over like something, and you guys are like, oh my God, we have to do this, or we have to offer them this? Do you have any stories like that might have been really influential at the time? That you could tell? I guess that would be because I imagine you have some. I think that I mean, it's been a long time, so I figured there might be some good stories here that we could tell, but.
Yeah, well, one of my really fond memories from the early days of Twitch was going to Dreamhack Winter in Jönköping, Sweden. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
I don't know.
But so we had a lot of trouble in Europe. So it was basically, at the time, Twitch had dominant market share in North America. Own3D had dominant market share in Europe. And the main reason for that was like, actually Twitch's servers like sucked ass for everyone in Europe. Yeah. Because we only had a San Francisco server at the time. We didn't have any presence in Europe. Whereas Own3D, they didn't own their own infrastructure. By the way, this is how they died eventually, is we owned our own infrastructure. They didn't. Yeah. It was a pretty unfair advantage. But so they would just pay CDN costs for any server in Europe. So our service sucked. Their service was good. We had no traction in Europe. But so we brought on Alexi White Raw the StarCraft 2 player.
Okay.
He helped us with Eastern Europe, which was huge for Dota, for StarCraft. And I remember he had introduced me to some of the big wigs in the Russian ecosystem at a after party that we were hosting in Jönköping in winter. Actually, it was summer now that I think about it, because we stayed up the entire night. But I have this like really hilarious memory of just being outside of the Twitch party at literally 4 a.m, and it's bright out because you're in Sweden, and when it's summer, the sun never goes down. And they were singing Russian drinking songs and teaching them to me, but I could not learn them. But if I ever stopped singing, that was a problem. So I just I just have a hilarious memory of like blurry just cigarettes and singing Russian drinking songs or attempting to.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine that would have been kind of crazy. So just
a little nerve wracking.
Yeah, a little it's only like, I don't know, like how many like lifespans of this company could be literally dictated on whether or not you can sing Russian drinking songs. What a way to decide Twitch. Yeah. What a way. One of the interesting things that you mentioned is that you made a platform that was originally primary just for gaming, which if you look at Twitch nowadays, I think is very interesting concept, because if you look at like one of the biggest categories that came up on Twitch, it would be like just chatting or the music categories. Do you think that it was a necessity that you went for gaming, or do you think maybe that there was some flaw there in that you could have also probably opened it up to like just chatting and stuff like that? I don't know how much of that is a proponent of the times.
Well, we've come full circle now. Twitch is all the way back to Justintv, and it's open to everything. But I mean, there's a couple things, and I feel comfortable saying these things because I think the Twitch founders have said them publicly on numerous occasions. But back in the Justintv days, Justintv was known for some not so kosher things. Mm-hmm. It was where people went to watch NBA games and NFL games and pay-per-view MMA games. And that was one of the main things, or where you went to go watch 24/7 Simpsons reruns. That was one of the main things people used Justintv for. Mm-hmm. And that presented branding issues and legal issues as well. So I think the company, and again, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said before, so you can go look up interviews from Emmett Shear as well as Michael Seibel from the time. I think they've talked about this kind of stuff in detail, but like they were going through like the, oh shit, we got to pivot because our current business is in threat of legal action and it's just not above board what we're doing essentially. So they, at the time, they were experimenting with multiple different pivots. Instagram was brand new at the time. Mm-hmm. So they're basically like, can we make Instagram, but for video? So just super simple video app, which ended up becoming an app called Social Cam. At the same time, they were like, let's go try to see if gaming will grow because it was growing organically. Yeah. And they're just like, let's go try it and see what happens. I know I'm kind of rambling. I don't even remember the beginning of this question, but that was kind of, they decided they had to pivot, and we chose one of those two directions.
Now, my question was originally like, knowing that how Just Chatting has now reappeared on there, was there a time there where you guys just joined gaming, or like was there considerations of actually just making it so it would be other things too? So, which you do pretty well.
Yeah. So, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was the startup, mentality. This part of the company is growing. Let's just pour every ounce of resources into that aspect of the company. And that's what we did.
Yeah. That's one of the things you kind of mention is like, oh, these things are going bad, or there might be legal actions here. So we have to like get away from that. I feel like that's actually more common. Like when I think about esports teams, that was another thing that was also kind of very common, is that didn't do things that were always the greatest, but I feel like that's just a startup thing because you don't have the resources to actually, like, as crappy as it sounds, you don't actually have the resources to do everything necessarily the way that it should be done. And then as you get more resources, you start to implement those things, which isn't necessarily good, but I feel like that's kind of just a way that it works with startups in general. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah. Run lean, run scrappy, ask for forgiveness, not permission. All the cliches. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. It was very interesting because, like, I've heard it like you kind of mentioned it here, and then esports. I remember like hearing stories about like all of these different things that broke up because I was always into the competitive side. That is what I really was interested. So, but you'd see a lot of the same things that would kind of just happen. So I think it's very interesting. So, kind of going into the Justintv days, what's it like the day where you guys have decimated Own 3D?
Man,
That must have been a party, right? Like there must have been like champagne bottles popping up. Imagine like Wolf on Wall Street here, where everyone's just like bringing champagne bottles out there, spraying it everywhere. What was that day like?
Way less cocaine than Wolf on Wall Street.
I didn't.
I don't recall any, actually, I will say, but it was a party for sure. I mean, we were in bitter warfare with them. It was actually really close for a long time. It was close from the outside perspective, but again, we had the servers.
Yeah.
They did not. So their costs were 10 times more than ours. So from an economical perspective, maybe it wasn't, but we were in bitter warfare, and this was the beginning. I think you called it the content wars, and and that's exactly what it was, because before this point, streamers would just stream on whatever platform they liked the most, even the big ones. And then suddenly Own3D is paying a ton of money, which meant that Twitch had to pay a ton of money. Of course, now that's literally pocket change compared to what's happening between YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Tencent platforms, etc. But it was a party. It was also kind of like, I almost felt a little bit bad because we knew that their costs were just outrageous, and we knew that it was not sustainable. And throughout this entire time, people just kept saying, Twitch doesn't have any competitors. Twitch is a monopoly. I'm like, no, we had to fight tooth and nail, and it really wasn't. It wasn't going in a sustainable direction. Like the amount of money that Own3D was paying streamers was never sustainable. They were going for probably that similar sort of startup thing. Let's go get the scale. Let's go get the audience, and then we can just raise money in the future. But that doesn't always work out.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that you both were kind of on this similar idea. You just did it better. Like, I feel like one of you would have closed down. I don't know if there was ever a solution. Like nowadays, obviously, the kind of weird content, which I'm going to ask you if you think that's a correct approach in a minute here. But we kind of have a similar thing where you have all of these different companies are doing. It's just these companies have so much fucking money that they can just do like almost. I mean, we saw Mixer finally at least close down, where Facebook has taken them over. So that's maybe one. Or they're just waiting and deciding to do something else later on. Who knows? I'd be very surprised. I think they merged though. So I mean, but you basically have a content war happening now. Just it's so much money that it's insane. Back then, you didn't have that amount of money to go. What seems like infinitely, because I feel like right now, YouTube, Amazon, they can pretty much just spend money how they want, and I don't know if there's ever an end to it, because it's just so much. So it's kind of crazy
too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, we are in unprecedented, completely insane time, not just for Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Tencent, everyone else. There's Brazilian Twitch competitors, but just content in general. I mean, Hulu, NBC, Netflix, HBO, it's crazy. It's a good time to be creating stuff.
It is a very good time. So kind of going into that, do you think you guys took the approach of buying content creators like a long time ago? That's kind of what you see happening now. Is that the correct approach? Because it feels like they're just doing an old idea, and that's what it kind of feels like. And especially when they go for like Twitch people or like streamers in general, it feels that way. I could understand if they're going for like stuff outside of, I would say, our internet content creation. So like when they go for maybe musicians or stuff like that, that makes a lot of sense because they might be bringing new eyes that aren't in the same scene. But do you think that this approach of like buying streamers is the way that these platforms should be doing it?
Well, I mean, you can't really put the toothpaste back in the tube at a certain point. I mean, it's, I know you already said it, but I'll be a broken record and repeat it. You've literally got Amazon, Google, Facebook, up until a few months ago, Microsoft. All competing, like literally the biggest tech companies in the US, plus Tencent, which is one of the most gigantic companies in China, all going after the same market. So can you go back? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think YouTube is ever going to kill Twitch. I don't think Twitch is ever going to kill YouTube. They're going to keep competing. So the question is, does it make sense for smaller companies to actually try and do this if you don't have the backing of a $1 trillion company? And that's when that was, Azubu went down this path. Own3D went down this path of paying outrageous fees when they couldn't even make any money. Today, you look around, it's like, what's caffeine's end game? They're spending bajillion dollars for content as well. So, I mean, if you're Google, it makes sense. You're bringing more people into the ecosystem. You have a great sales team. You're making billions and billions and billions in revenue on advertising. You're billions on people's data. Yeah. So that makes sense. But if you don't have infinite resources, it becomes a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that makes sense. So you go into Twitch. You get through that. You get through the content war days. I imagine that Twitch being bought by Amazon was probably another very historic event in that time frame there that happened to you. What was that like, them buying? Did you know about it? Is it something that one day everyone came out like, hey, guess what? We're getting bought by Amazon.
Well, it was about, I can't remember the exact timeline, but I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks before the Amazon buyout that the rumors started swirling of Google and YouTube buying us out. And, at the time I was like, I was really young when I first started working at Twitch. I didn't know what a stock option was really at the time, but I was like, I was starting to get this feeling in my stomach, like I was supposed to get more stock last year. Like, I got to go push on this because I was supposed to get a little bit more equity in this company and I haven't gotten it yet. And I started like banging on doors. I'm like, I was told this and like multiple times by my manager, blah, blah, blah. Cause I got this feeling like we're doing really, really well right now. And this is something that's going to happen. It's an inevitability, either that or we go public. So then the Google rumor started swirling and it was like, okay, it's really happening. And no, I was not senior enough at the time to be part of any of those conversations. But ever since, after the Google rumors, it was like, okay, it's going to happen. And then it came out that it was Amazon, which to me was like a bit of a surprise because you don't think of Amazon as a media type business at the time, especially.
They didn't have Amazon Prime. They didn't have video or anything like that. They didn't have any of that.
Yeah. Now advertising is one of the fastest growing segments in Amazon, if you look at their corporate reports. So yeah, no, it was incredible. I mean, like, seriously, I feel so lucky to have had this journey because esports was a lifelong passion for me. Yeah. And it was something I was doing with all of my free time on the weekends, after school, when I was in college. I was traveling to events on my own dime. I loved esports. And then not only did I get to give a career with a decent living, but all of a sudden it was like, oh, cha-ching, like we just cashed out. Like it's not even just a decent living now. Like this is a very substantial amount of money for anyone. So even though I didn't have as much equity as I would have liked, it then ended up being very, very good. So yeah, it was amazing.
So you guys get bought out by Amazon and you're working for Amazon. Is there like any fear that like, oh God, this big corporate company is coming in here. They're going to change everything, which I mean, I guess probably eventually did happen. Looking back now in hindsight, but I mean, at the time, was there any fear? Was it, oh my God, I'm so excited that we're now owned by this huge corporate company that is huge? Like what was the thought?
It was mainly excitement. I mean, for sure. There, of course, everyone says like after the buyout, just, be careful, it's going to change. And that's true. But it did change. But it was never like, and it probably never is like this. Actually, I don't know. Maybe sometimes it is like this, but it was never like, okay, Amazon bought us, change.
Yeah.
It was much slower, much more subtle. And ramped up over time. But, in the first year or two, the only major thing is we got Twitch Prime, which is like, okay, now it's even easier for us to go get streamers because they have this crazy new revenue stream, which was amazing.
Yeah. one of the things you kind of mentioned is that you had some equity there. One of the things I'm pretty sure this is you, if I found it. If it's wrong, I will admit it. You definitely are more into stocks now, because I feel like I found some of your posts to.
Oh God.
Oh yes. Oh yes. So I don't know if I've been like over the last 2 years, I've also gotten into stocks.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I'm pretty sure the Google algorithm, when I was like looking up things on you, was like, oh, Blake likes stocks. Here's an old post from what is it? Stock Tweets? Is that what it's called?
Stock Twits.
Stock Twits. Yeah, I found
Stock Twits is. Oh God, it's the biggest waste of time.
I would never recommend it to anyone.
It's Wall Street bets, but for any individual stock, you just go there and people. It's just a waste of time. But if I'm ever like, I'm like the world's biggest Nintendo fanboy. Full disclosure, have a fair amount of Nintendo stock. And I'm always just like talking about, because there's a bunch of other analysts on there. Yes, I am a little obsessed with stocks.
When was that after this where you have this amount of equity that you're like, oh, hey, maybe I should probably start to learn about this? Or had you started to learn about it earlier? Because it's a very odd thing that I don't know if a lot of people know about you.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo is the first stock I ever bought, I think, before Pokemon Go. So that one did pretty good for me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like a big thing. It's more of like a distraction. I wake up in the morning and I check my portfolio and then I just like look at news for like 20 minutes and then I get on with my day. It's a waste of time. I shouldn't even be spending that much time on it. Let's be honest.
Oh, I wake up I'm actually trying to learn how to do like day trading stuff. So like for me, it's like, I'm looking at like charts and stuff like that. Like every morning, and like I'm actually I'm not gonna put any money till I feel like I actually know what I'm doing. But like I found it hilariously funny because I feel like stocks are actually very confusing for most people. So I wasn't sure like how good of a stock guru is Ben Goldhaber. Maybe we need to take his advice there.
Well, the best advice is the most boring advice, which you'll hear everywhere if you listen to the right people, which is just go buy an index fund and never look at it. Just keep putting money into an index fund. That's it. I've never really compared like all of my portfolio performance, but I'm sure I would have done better if that's all I did.
Yeah, index funds do pretty well. So continuing on, besides that little side tangent that I conveniently found there, you're working through Twitch and you do a lot of different kind of like jobs at Twitch, or a couple different. You were a senior manager of partnerships for leagues and events, and then you were also director of content marketing, which is very, I would say, similar but different jobs. So being the senior manager of partnership, what were you mostly doing at that time? Was that like getting all of your League of Legends tournaments and all of that stuff, making sure that they were featured on like Twitch? Yeah,
that was the best job ever for me because I love traveling. I love esports. I love all esports.
Yeah.
And in this job, I got to travel to dozens and dozens and dozens of tournaments. I went to Sweden twice a year, every year for both Dreamhacks. I went to Cologne, Germany for Gamescom practically every year. I got to go to Tokyo, Seoul. I got to go to Valencia, Spain, Seattle for PAX, Boston for PAX East. I got Las Vegas for Evo every year. That was the best time for me at Twitch. I was so happy because my job was relationships. I was managing the relationships with all these major leagues and tournaments on the platform, which I love. I would like to consider myself a people person, and I thought I was pretty good at it. I got to rub shoulders with executives across the industry, take them out to fancy dinners, travel the world. It was a dream job.
Sounds like
it was hard. It was hard work too. I also, whenever anything went wrong, and at the time shit went wrong all the time because our servers sucked, I was the one who had to deal with that. But it was amazing.
That's fair. So these almost like doing these partnerships with like these league events, I imagine it wasn't to the scale it is now, because we saw like YouTube and Facebook who are just buying out like Overwatch, where they're like, oh, you're gonna be exclusive, like exclusivity. God, that's a hard word to say. Was that even a thing then? Was that something you even had to worry about?
I mean, it was. I mean, all the way back to the Own3D days, there was competition for broadcast rights for ESL, for Dreamhack, for pretty much all of the big events, but it was a completely different ball game. I mean, at the time, it was like, we'll give you a higher CPM. Or like, we'll give you a better percentage split on subscriber revenue.
Okay.
I think sometimes for the bigger tournaments, there was straight up cash, but no, it wasn't like it is today.
Did you ever think that it would get to the point that it is today? Like, is that something that you can even feasibly imagine?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a believer in esports, always. So when it was growing, 50% every year, growing from 50 million global, fans to, 80 million to 140,
Yep.
I didn't think that was going to slow down anytime soon. So I I distinctly remember like one of my earliest esports memories is like way back in 2010 at World Cyber Games, Los Angeles. I got there and it was really the first time I got to meet people who became really close friends.
Yeah.
Rivington, Seltzer, her boyfriend Torch, DJ Wheat, Marcus, Scoots, Slasher. I became really close friends with them over the years and really got to know them at this event. And I remember Trevor, Rachel Seltzer's boyfriend, had just come back from Korea. He was carrying his backpack from the airport when he got there, and he was competing. He was out there competing in the GSL, and he's just like, "There's stadiums, and it's gonna be like this in the US." And we're all like 21 years old. We're all about the same age. Not Marcus and Scoots, obviously, but the rest of us are all about the same age, and we're just like bright-eyed and optimistic about the future. And I think Marcus was like, come on, everyone gets that way after they come back from Korea. But we're like, no, man, this is the future. So I've always believed that we were going to fill stadiums and it was going to be this big.
Which, I mean, it has. So, I mean, good on you. The rose-colored glasses turned out to be true, which is good. One of the things, though, I will say about your optimistic attitude, and this is something I've seen you kind of bring up a little bit before when people talk about the esports bubble, as people like to talk about. And I don't know if you've ever called it that, but I know you've said that there could be corrections. But I don't know if you've ever really stated your opinion of whether or not you think that there is some sort of bubble or not. Because, I mean, it's looking at Overwatch League now, comparative to like when you first saw the numbers, it probably is not as positive, I would think, as when it first happened, especially when you see the different fundings that came in. What do you think now? Do you think that there is a realistic thing of a bubble? Is there a correction kind of assumes that it is overinflated, but not necessarily a bubble, I guess. So where do you stand there? Especially with a company that is doing aggregation for all these events. I imagine that that's something that's got to be terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I think when you say bubble, it kind of insinuates that a collapse would be like 50% of the industry just goes away, or like the value goes down by 50%. I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm extremely confident, in fact, that there's tons more upside to be had in the industry. When people talk about, nobody's making any money, the average esports fan only puts $5 back into the ecosystem, that is equally as big of a problem as it is an opportunity for hopefully someone like Juked to help solve that problem. That's one of our aspirations, is to drive more revenue for everyone through the value chain, and hopefully find ways to do that by getting revenue from the actual people who are fans of esports, not just the sponsors and just the advertisers. But obviously there are issues. I mean, the most obvious that you can point to is Overwatch League and potentially Call of Duty League, although this last season seemed to do much better than everyone expected.
I have a lot more hope for Call of Duty. The other thing I've always said about Call of Duty League is if you look at like any one of those like players, they're all content creators, like first, who are now playing Call of Duty, which is very different than Overwatch. Like if you look like some of their like social outreach, it's insane how much each player has for social outreach.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like 2 million followers on Twitter and shit. But I mean, it's easy to look at the franchising models as the biggest risk right now. Obviously, we've never seen anything like it. $25 million for a slot is insane, probably overvalued. But the teams who bought in the first season of Overwatch League for $20 million, their slots went up to $30 million or $35 million the next season. So the question is, what's going to happen next year for Overwatch League? So obviously, I'm concerned. Like I'm still an Overwatch fan, even after all of the shit with the game being terribly balanced and metas being terrible and stale for way, way, way too long and probably still not that good. I'm still an Overwatch fan. I'm still optimistic as just in my nature, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are concerns. And then you look at Counter-Strike, and player salaries are in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Buyouts are in the millions. Is that sustainable? Are the teams actually making back that money off those players? Or is it being fueled by venture capital?
Yeah.
More likely it's the second half. But the thing is, if you look at technology and you look at venture capital in general, you're looking at the 10 to 20 year horizon. You're not looking at next year. So I think if you're building towards a 10 to 20 year vision, then esports is going to be fine. Esports is going to be way bigger than it is today. And those teams that are, taking in tons of venture capital, maybe not all of them will survive, but some of them are going to be big winners. And that's how it goes in tech. Some you're going to get some big winners, and then the rest are going to die, and that's just how it goes. So that was my rambling.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, an interesting thought that I had. Actually, I want to go this. So I want to ask another question first. This is a really exciting question that I thought of that I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold it for a minute. So you were the director of content for Twitch. What did that include? Because obviously Twitch eventually went on to actually do a lot of their own, at least put on their own broadcasts. Were you part of some of that? Because I know it's what DJ Wheat actually did a lot of too.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I didn't mention about my roles previously at Twitch is my team always ran Twitch's social media and wrote our weekly newsletter.
Oh, okay.
For the entire time that I was at Twitch, I created our blog in 2011, and I created our social media channels and essentially ran them myself or with a small team. So when I actually ended up transitioning into this new director of content marketing role, it was, okay, we really need to take these things more seriously. We need to hire up. Because I was also running the front page content curation during that entire period as well. So it was getting all these things together were getting so big that I could no longer manage it and do my other job. So I basically had the opportunity, okay, I get a director title, I can hire a couple more people, I can actually focus on this and do this full time. So as director of content marketing, it's funny because this is 5 years into my time at Twitch, even after the Amazon acquisition, but this role was still very startup-y in nature because we did a bunch of random shit. We did front page of Twitch, weekly newsletter, blog, social media, and we also did Twitch's original content. So Twitch Weekly was the first show that we ever produced as a company. And that was literally myself and Brandon, aka Atrioc, who was awesome dude who was on my team at the time. We're just like, we're writing this newsletter every week that's like, here's what to watch. Let's just do a stream of here's what to watch. And I think our first version we shot with a laptop in the computer room at Twitch with a blue Yeti, and it sounded like shit and it looked like shit, and the camera was like crotch level, just facing our crotches. But we just wanted to do it. Yeah. So we did, and then that ended up becoming Twitch's flagship show. So yeah, worked a ton with Marcus for many, many years on original content.
Yeah, he's a very interesting dude. I did one of these with him. So
I saw that.
It was good. I didn't know he was almost arrested by the FBI, which was probably the most interesting thing. Looking at doing this content, what was your plans growing content for Twitch? Was it looking to make it like a full TV broadcast? What were the thoughts when you were working there that is maybe the eventual goal that we could see for Twitch going in the future?
I mean, I don't think it was ever going to be a big part of Twitch's business. I mean, Twitch is a tech company through and through. It's a platform that anyone can use. So it was never going to be a media business. But what it did provide was community management. I mean, our most dedicated fans and most dedicated brand evangelists were in that stream every single week. The people that wanted to test out every new feature and that we could use to dog food different products. We actually used Twitch Weekly to dog food a bunch of different products, like closed captioning and all kinds of other things. So I don't think I ever really had aspirations of let's go launch 20 shows, but we did want to launch more shows. Eventually Capcom Pro Talk, which Adam Contini one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. Hilarious dude. Produced that show and it was amazing. And that was because we had a studio for Twitch Weekly.
Mhm.
We were able to do that. Then, of course, the Twitch sales team was like, oh, we can do things. We can fly streamers into our audience or into our office and produce a show around that. So it did eventually end up evolving into something much bigger than
Yeah.
just Twitch Weekly. But no, I didn't have big plans. It was just like, I just want to do this thing. So we
Mhm.
just did it. Yeah.
Now, going through Twitch, obviously they did some layoffs, and you were one of the people that they laid off. Um, did you know that that was coming? Was that something that you were aware of? Was there like, hey, I have time to prep, anything like that?
No, not at all. No. I never in a million years would have ever expected that my role would have been on the chopping block for Twitch. I think, I mean, there's a lot of backstory, obviously, but my role did eventually change. I was in the midst of transferring into a new role that was going to be esports focused, where I was going to be essentially esports content manager, just, organizing all of the esports content on the platform and even potentially building something that would aggregate esports content and do a bit of curation. That was what I was transitioning to. We had just hired a new person who I transitioned to managing to that person. And we're just in about maybe 2 to 3 months into building out this new role, this new concept. So I think if there's one thing that I would say to everyone working in a corporate environment is definitely you should be cognizant of how critical your role is and maintaining a role that has like direct ties to revenue or direct ties to something like that. Because I mean, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. You've always wanted to do this, Ben. Let's do this. Let's go. Like, you're going to run wild and this is going to be great. We're going to get you budget. And I was super excited about it. And then out of the blue, I got a meeting invite from the new like VP of content, Mike. And I'm like, I haven't talked to Mike in like 6 months. What is this? And that morning, actually, as I was leaving for the office, I was talking to my girlfriend. I'm like, maybe I wonder if I'm about to get laid off. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I'm like, this is a weird meeting. And I got to the office that morning and pretty much like half of Marcus's team, which was really the team that got hit by these layoffs by far the most, was outside the office smoking cigarettes. None of them smoke cigarettes.
Okay,
And
that's a bad sign.
I was just like, oh shit. And I didn't say anything. I just walked up and went in and they said, please leave. Your stuff, we'll put your stuff together. Don't go to your desk. We're going to package it up for you. You're going to be escorted out of the office now. And
what the hell? That is one.
Yeah, that's how it went down for all of us. And it's not like it was like the worst layoff ever. Like there was severance offered. B, I had 2 months to try and find another role at Twitch and I could stay on if I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was insane. I mean, when I joined the company, it was like 22 people. And by the time I got laid off, it was like 1,700. And definitely played some super critical roles throughout my time at Twitch, helping to acquire content creators, build the brand, launch shows, even tied to revenue, helped drive millions in additional revenue, through partnerships and things like that. So yeah, it was.
Were you jaded?
Intense.
I feel like I would be jaded. I would be so this thing that I had spent my life building up, and then all of a sudden them just throw me out the door. I would be so jaded.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just that I'm like almost too positive of a person because of course it sucked ass and I was pissed and I was pissed for myself, but I was also pissed for a lot of the other people that got laid off. Not all of them had as good of a severance package as me. I mean, I had been with the company for 7 years.
Yeah.
So it definitely scales up the longer you'd been there. But for me, it was a terrible experience. Don't wish that upon anyone. But for me, it never hurt my passion for esports.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. question for you. You have said in interviews that you had tried to throw the idea of what Juked is now, or doing a content aggregator towards Twitch before. Why wouldn't they pick it up? Because that seems like something that just would benefit them completely on their platform.
Well, I think again, it comes down to it is a tech platform. Anything that resembles editorial, manual curation, original media, it kind of goes counter to the tech platform. Everything about that. I mean, look at YouTube. Is there any manual curation on YouTube? No. I mean, there's like music and gaming and news. And for some reason, those are the only categories they even have on the platform. The rest is all algorithm based. And I think it's essentially the same reason for both companies. You know, neither company, it doesn't make sense. You know, YouTube can't be create an esports hub, because then they have to create a music hub and an art hub and news hub, and like they have to do all this other stuff. So I think it's a philosophical reason.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of going through that. I don't. God, it just seems like they could be more, especially considering that they're owned by Amazon now. It feels like they're more than just that, anyways. Like they branched into all these other things, and like creating content now. Like Amazon is now got a content section, right? Like they do Amazon Video, and they actually get their own shows and they pay for them now, and they have exclusive Amazon shows. So it's just weird that that didn't happen. Now, one of the cool things that I thought was very interesting is that you actually had some team offers, supposedly, after leaving Twitch. Or that there was a lot of different offers. What types of things were you looking at doing? When you mentioned doing team stuff, would it have been like the competitive esports? Would it have been content creation? Would it have been marketing? What kind of stuff was floating your boat?
Yeah, I had a really awesome offer for a C-level title at one of the top teams. I mean, I would say tier 2 team. I'm not going to give any more hints than that. Okay. Not like Cloud9, but one of the top teams was looking to really hire leadership, and it was a super attractive offer. But ultimately, I just wanted to pursue this idea. I wanted, first of all, before that, I just wanted to work with cool people that I liked a lot, and I just didn't get the right feeling talking to the owners of this other team. It just didn't feel right to me. I was talking to them. I was talking to another major gaming company before the Twitch layoffs. Way before Overwatch League launched, I was actually offered a role to help run Overwatch League, which I always think back like, holy shit, like what if I actually took that? It would have been crazy.
What would you have been doing for Overwatch League?
I mean, I never got a formal offer, but I was really pretty buddy with Nate Nanzer at the time. And I got brought into one of the first ever Overwatch League presentations way before the league existed. It was like, we're going to do franchising and we're going to do this draft system, which ended up being too complex for legal reasons to actually implement. And I was an Overwatch player. Like I hosted the first Overwatch tournament ever, like literally of all time. And Overwatch was my jam. So, I had the golden handcuffs though, Amazon stock, man. I couldn't let that.
Fair.
Yeah, I couldn't let that go. Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like you were freed from the handcuffs when they let you off. Because would you have ever left Twitch if they wouldn't have laid you off? I don't know if you would have.
Hard to say. I mean, I think after my last tranche of stock finished vesting, it would be a little bit easier to justify. I think I probably would have eventually, mainly because it started to feel like I was spinning my wheels there. Like one of the most frustrating, I had a couple insanely frustrating things happen in my career there. One of which was the head of marketing at the time transferred one of my direct reports to another team without even telling me, I learned when he emailed the entire department that this was happening. And it actually ended up being a disaster. Like the person who was transferred didn't really want to be transferred. He ended up leaving the company 6 months later. He was doing awesome stuff on my team. The guy who was the manager of the person that was on my team ended up getting fired later because he was not doing a good job. And I basically was like, this is insane. You cannot just take my employee who's doing really mission critical stuff and transfer him to another team.
Yeah.
Eventually I ended up going all the way to upper management being like, I need to resolve this. There needs to be some kind of resolution here. And the advice I got was, you should go read this book on crisis or on negotiation or I forget what it was. It was just like, go read this book about how to like work with people better. And I'm like, you have got to be shitting me. And then later in my career, I got headcount for a new hire approved. Went through the interview process, super painful, talking to dozens of people, sending them to the office, only to find somebody we loved and say, okay, let's send the offer. And then, oh, sorry, your head got transferred to engineering. That happened twice in a year.
Oh my God.
Twice. And this was pretty near the end before I got laid off.
Is this what happens to all corporations when they get so big? Because that's what, like, those are horror stories that you kind of just hear. So there comes a point with any company where as you start to get bigger, you're kind of destined for these issues.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think, like a lot of the people who got laid off were like me, who had been with the company for 5, 6, 7 years. And I think at a certain point, like, if you're owned by a major corporation, publicly traded, you're like 1,000 people, 2,000 people. There's a certain point where like your seniority isn't what matters. They're looking for someone with to come in and clean house and like rebuild things. And they almost want to clean the old
like the old guard out, like get rid of all the old ideas or people associated with old things that are no longer relevant. Yeah. I mean, that's awful, but it kind of makes a little bit of sense. For Juked, do you ever foresee yourself being a company that gets that big? Is that like on the dreams there of like, I want this company to be a huge multinational tech company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, we're much more of a media company right now. Aspects of Juked are tech oriented. We don't see ourselves as a pure media play, but if you look at our content offering, our original content, what the product does, it resembles a lot more of ESPN or Bleacher Report than it does of Twitch. So it'll be different, but our goal is to become a media empire and really push the esports industry forward. So we're 4 people right now. Hopefully we're 400 in a couple of years. That'd be the hope.
I have to ask you a question because this is something that I've been saving on. Do you worry that there's going to be a day where someone, because right now you don't really have competition, I would say that does it as well as you do, which I feel like is how a lot of things kind of start up as far as like esports specifically. But are you ever worried that, oh, hey, maybe Amazon might actually like this idea and will either try to buy you out or compete? Because if Amazon competes, I think you're screwed. Okay, I'm going to say it. I think if Amazon decides that they want to do something like this, or if Google decides that they want to do something like this, you are in a very bad spot just because of the amount of money that they have. I mean, it might just be easier for them to buy you, but...
Yeah, believe me, you and every investor I've ever talked to share that same concern. But for us, first of all, we have a massive head start. We're supporting 35 games. No one else is supporting 35 games. We're crazy. Our features are pretty good and only getting better. But I think for us, we're around the corner from launching a bit more interactive side of Juked, where you're going to actually have a social profile, and there's going to be gamification aspects where you'll be competing against other people to predict winners for matches. And I think the more and more we start to build that side of the product, the more and more defensible we get. Because if there's a network effect where you want to be on Juked because that's where the big pick'ems brackets are happening for League of Legends and CSGO and Dota 2, and that's where all of your friends are watching, and you have like watch parties and things like that, that viral effect. Those are the things that we really need to tap into to build a defensible product. I think the other aspect to building a defensible product for a media company is our content. So we've only just started to write our own original content on the platform over the last month. And in the near future, we also plan to launch shows and video content as well. And that, I mean, is is The Athletic. Like The Athletic, are you familiar with The Athletic?
Not really, but
Okay,
I
so
kind of understand what you guys are going for.
Yeah, they went out and they hired all the best journalists,
Mm-hmm.
all of the best journalists, and you have to pay to use their platform. There's no free product, but they're defensible because they got the best creators.
Yeah.
They've built this brand. They've built this reputation. So I think we can do that too. And there's a number of ways that we think we're building a defensible product through brand.
I saw some of the monetization that you guys were doing, because that was when I was originally looking at interviewing you and looking at Juked. I was like, well, how are they going to monetize this? Because if they're just going with ad revenue, I'm very terrified for them. But then I saw some of the stuff with, and I'm no marketing genius at all. But like some of the stuff with like the subscription and like the fantasy football, and I was like, oh, this stuff is very interesting. And then I was going to ask you, like, on the horizon for your guys' own planned content, which you've kind of already said that you guys are planning on, what does that horizon look like? What type of content is Juke going to be doing in the future, or planning on doing in the future?
Yeah. So my co-founder, Chris, also known as Chanman V, he created literally like 10 different esports talk shows and podcasts over the last 8 years. He did StarCraft, he did Hearthstone, he did 2 Overwatch shows. He's done like more casual shows. He's created some of the most popular esports talk shows ever. I was a co-host on Twitch Weekly and created that show. So think Talking Heads. We've seen so many esports shows where it's just a bunch of looks like this show. It's people in with their webcams in boxes. So we'd like to take it up a notch from that. But I mean, I still think, and I was listening to your interview with Monty, and he said the same thing. But I still think ever since Live on 3 went away, what is the esports show? Who is producing the esports show? And this is like a topic we could talk about forever, because 80% of people in esports that I talk to are like, it doesn't need to exist. A CSGO fan doesn't give a shit about League of Legends. Who cares? It's not going to work. I don't know where you fall on this, but
I like all the content, and actually off air, I might talk with you about some of the ideas that I'm actually trying to work on. But because the whole thing that I did with this show, and I don't have, like, I can tell you what I imagine this show to be in like the future, because I don't like right now it's kind of talking boxes, talking heads. But where I eventually see this show is like B-roll, and I see different things, and it's like almost like those old bio interviews with like different music. And that's where I would like to see the show go, right? Is like that level of production. And I'm so disappointed that all of these areas that actually do have the means for this production are too lazy or too dumb to be doing this kind of stuff. I agree. I think that the content production, generally speaking, is very sad for esports. So.
Yeah, man, there's so little storylines being told right now. It's frustrating as hell. I'm a friend. I'm good friends with Christopher, Monty, and Susie, and so I don't want to toot his horn too much. But like, I was watching the Pop Flash Valorant tournament, and they did this like all these biopics on these different players, and it's like, oh, I have been craving this like actual storytelling in esports. It's so rare. Dota 2 TI does it. Some of the better CS:GO majors have done it. Like, other than that, you don't ever see it. It sucks. So I think there's huge opportunities. I mean, I loved Live on 3, man. Live on 3 is what got me into esports in 2010, was listening to Scoot, Slasher, and Marcus, who know everything about every community. Every single Sunday, it used to air on Sundays, I would be multi-tabling poker games and watching Live on 3 and watching whatever other esport event on my other monitor, and I was happy. Like, I missed that show, and I want it to exist again.
Yeah. An interesting you mentioned there is multi-tabling on poker tables. Did you do that?
Yeah, when it was legal.
Oh, yeah, when it was legal. Actually, that brings into another conversation too. Gambling, is that where your site is going to eventually? God, my power's flickering. Please don't go off.
Oh no,
Florida, stop. Gambling, is your site going to end up pushing towards gambling? Because I could see it being a very natural jump. Obviously, you can't because it's illegal in. I don't know if there's any states that it's legal in. I think there might be.
There's a few. Yeah.
There's a few. But right now, you guys are, I think, out of California, right?
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, I've said this very transparently in the past. I don't do sports betting.
Yeah.
I don't play fantasy. It's not something I am super knowledgeable about, nor is it something I'm super passionate about. But if we're building an audience of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions upon millions of esports fans, probably more hardcore,
Yeah.
then there's clearly a natural synergy there. So I don't know if you saw the news just yesterday or 2 days ago, ESPN and DraftKings officially partnered up.
Oh, yeah.
1 year ago, Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, who owns ESPN, said that he doesn't foresee
There's
Disney,
just too much money in it. Like,
Disney
I don't know
ever,
anyone who says that. I just like any sort of thing that you can do gambling. There's so much money in it. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's insane. Like,
I mean,
some esports teams literally were able to fund themselves through gambling. Okay, that is how insane it was. Like all esports teams, I think mostly lose money, especially like the European ones. You can actually see their like how much they're losing, and you're just like, oh well, how did they make a lot of money? It's like, oh hey, look at these betting sites that are like advertising. It's insane. It is crazy. But your platform sees it almost seems like a very natural fit, especially if you're doing fantasy league. It's like only one step. Like how much money do you want to spend on your game? So it seems like a very natural fit, which has got to be also a very interesting quandary being in the United States where it is mostly illegal.
Mostly illegal, but becoming more and more accepted and more and more legal extremely rapidly. I don't follow this stuff as closely. We have some investors who actually are in the sports betting space, so they know this and they're sending us updates like, oh, did you see this news? Like it might be illegal in Florida soon. Oh, like New Jersey, blah blah blah. So it's becoming more valid as a business model.
Yeah.
And I mean, if freaking ESPN is leaning into it, we can too. So that's a really long-winded way of saying like it's complicated, but there's obviously a great opportunity for us there.
Yeah, because as far as like monetization, if you could do that, I mean, I that might honestly solve any sort of like it's insane. It is just incredibly insane how much it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A slight side question: you originally started Gamescast TV with obviously Matt. Was there ever any thought about bringing him in for this project, which is a 2.0 of Gamecast TV? And I always wondered why he wasn't brought in.
Actually, he was brought in. So
there we go.
Well, before we actually even incorporated the company, and it was just a spreadsheet, and it was a deck, and it was an idea. I was like, hey Matt, like I'm basically building Gamescast 2.0, as you rightly called it. I've called it that before.
I quoted you. That's a quote from you. Okay. I'm not that good at making up titles.
All right. Fair enough. He came up with our first logo. But at the time we had zero money and we hadn't raised any, and I hadn't put any money into it yet. So it was just a bunch of volunteer efforts, and he politely bowed out after working on it for like 2 weeks or something. So I did. Actually, he was the first designer I reached out to. Okay. Would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, I always wondered like what was, because it seemed like there'd be a story there, because like it was your guys' idea. Like, I mean, it was very close to, I mean, obviously the technology has advanced significantly since that time, which I think makes everything look nicer and is easier and stuff like that. But I always wondered that, because that seems like a story, like, you know, it was interesting. So I'm sorry that I bet you he regrets not coming on now that like everything is, I'm just saying, Matt, if you're out there, you probably regret your decision a little bit.
I think he's doing fine. Doing fine.
Yeah. Maybe. Do you think that you're going to end up being bought out? Do you think that's what's going to happen? Or do you think that you're going to keep the company, like realistically?
Yeah, I do think that we're going to be bought out. I think that's the startup dream. It's either get bought out or IPO. Otherwise, you know, none of your investors ever get any liquidity. It's the only way that in the way that people invest today that actually anyone makes any money. So I think a buyout is likely for us for a lot of reasons. I think if you look around in the media world, almost every gigantic media company out there, period, has either invested in esports, owns esports property, or has bought an esports property. Disney, like they have ESPN esports. ML BAM is like their technology platform for streaming, which is interesting. They're like Turner bought Bleacher Report and has run E-League. Fox, 24th Century Fox put $100 million into Caffeine TV. and the list keeps going. Like Comcast is involved, Verizon is involved. So I think a lot of these big media conglomerates, they need to stay on the cutting edge. They need to appeal to the younger audience, and we could potentially offer that. I'm not looking to turn this around in 2 years. I think we have a lot of growing to do first. I want to be a place where tens of millions of people are coming every year to check out what's going on in esports. But at that time, these media companies are potential acquirers. I think sports betting companies are potential acquirers. We've seen Better Collective acquired HLTV.org like 3 months ago for $35 million. I think what we're building is like HLTV, but for every esport. That's kind of our part of our vision anyway. So yeah, I do think we'll be bought, and hopefully it'll be a really great outcome for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. Looking at selling it, and obviously this is way years down the road. What do you think it would take for you to sell it? Is it just the price tag? Is that all it is? No,
I mean, obviously not. I think I'll want to remain involved and I want to remain in control. I want to do what's best for the esports community. That really is our goal, is to grow esports. So as long as we can do those things and keep building content and keep shedding light on grassroots esports communities and hopefully help drive revenue for people throughout the value chain, I will be happy. I think, we definitely want to be with the technology dream. We want to do the $1 billion exit. We want to be a unicorn. But if we can have a great outcome for all of our investors and we can keep doing awesome things for esports, I'm going to be super happy.
Okay. So doing a startup takes a lot of time and effort. What does that take away from your personal life and your personal relationships? Is that something that nags on them? Because I imagine, I know esports in general kind of does that because it's a very time intensive thing. But I've heard the same thing from startups, that they're just as time intensive.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can imagine the pressure is pretty intense.
Yeah.
It's not just me making my own destiny. I've got a lot of people who rely on me, who their salary is dependent on what we're doing. And frankly, they're sacrificing a lot.
Yeah.
So they're sacrificing so much. And I'm so thankful for how much they're sacrificing, because we're not able to pay, market rate right now. So my employees have taken a leap of faith to join the company, and we're giving them a lot of equity. So they have that ownership, but every startup has the risk of just dying.
Yeah.
So they're taking a massive risk, and they're not making the money that they could make in a lot of other jobs. So there's a lot of pressure and anxiety to make sure that I'm taking care of my people. And now we're running this crowd equity campaign, and we have 650 new investors, some of which put $100 in, some of them put $10,000 in. And, I feel the same way about our investors. It's, we gotta make a successful company and have a good outcome, because these people have put a lot of money into the product. So, that stress is pretty intense. And some weeks are great. You're riding high, metrics are looking great. Got a new investor, everything, feel like you're on top of the world. Next week it's like, oh shit, our retention was really bad this week. What happened? Why was it so bad? Why didn't we get more viewers? Are we doomed? Is it over? Imposter syndrome is something that you can feel in all kinds of different roles. But this is the first time I've ever run a company. So, the stress is intense, but I guess I would say I'm used to working weekends. I mean, I've been doing this basically the whole time I was at Twitch. I mean, every esport event's always been on the weekends. Yeah. So I'm kind of used to that part, but the pressure of not letting down my employees and my investors is definitely a lot.
What's that like, dealing with this imposter syndrome? Because I imagine this is a whole new ball game, right? You even mentioned it there, being the head honcho and being there and having to do all this thing. You're responsible for many people's lives. What's it like dealing with that imposter syndrome? What does that feel like for you?
Well, I'm lucky to, my co-founder, Chris, he's the COO, and, for good reason. I mean, he works harder than me. For sure he does. This dude works all hours. It's really, I'm thankful to have someone like Chris that I can rely on to just get shit done and keep pushing me when I'm moving too slowly. But I mean, yeah, it's like we're at the early startup stage. We are pre-revenue.
Yeah.
Our user base is growing quickly, but we are like so many steps removed from actually being a successful company that sometimes it's just like it feels extremely daunting. But very cliche, but you just got to take it a step at a time.
Yeah. Do you ever have employees that are do your employees have that same level of fear, or are they just mostly happy-go-lucky? Or do you have to ever be like, you know what, I stick it out, make it work?
Well, I'm being very transparent with you here, and I'm always transparent with my employees too. Every week we talk about our financial metrics, how much money we have left in the bank. Every week we talk about what went well and what went terribly. And we talk about our numbers and what our pain points and our issues are. So I've always been extremely transparent with the company. And that's not going to change.
I imagine that this investment then, especially the overwhelming amount of people who have recently invested, because I don't know if you imagine that you would have 350,000 extra dollars just coming in here. Like, that's pretty insane.
Not this soon, not this quickly. No,
like it's not even been a week, has it?
No, it's been 5 days.
I mean, that's got to be a huge mountain of relief for you and your team in general, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I did fundraising last year. We closed about $800,000, and our burn rate's low. I mean, there's only 4 of us full time. We've got a couple contractors, so our burn rate's relatively low. But this is a huge sigh of relief because this gives us the flexibility we need to not be like, oh shit. Like, if our numbers are down next month, like we have the ability to like not freak out about it. We have the ability to think analytically, like what's the best thing we can do to grow long term, and not just be like, okay, we have to grow every single month, otherwise we're going to die. I think we definitely hope to raise more. We're at 360,000 right now. Just opened the page. It's amazing.
Oh, really? Because I wrote down this number like literally right before this interview, I think, and it was at 345, I think.
That's how fast it's growing right now, which is totally insane. So yeah, it's been awesome. But I think we want to get even more. So even more runway and flexibility. Yeah.
Another question for you about Juked. How long do you think until you guys are going to be profitable? Like, is there a time frame where you think that you might be to where at least you're hitting your burn rate, right? Where everything is, you know what, this is good. Like, it's okay. We're maybe not making money, but we're also not dying.
Yeah. So our modeling gets us there in 2023. So a couple of years. We're primarily looking to do that through the subscription model. So our goal is to get tens of thousands of people paying $5 to $10 per month. And that's the primary way that we expect to be closing that gap. I think there's a lot of different schools of thought in Silicon Valley. One of which is go spend as much money as you can to get as much market share as possible as quickly as possible. And that does definitely work. But right now, especially given the fact that we're in a global recession, probably, if not depression, I think most folks are kind of going the opposite direction and wanting to build sustainably. And that's how we do think about things. It's going to be really difficult to get 35,000 people paying $5 a month. That's going to be super hard, but I think it's doable. I think there are millions of esports fans out there that will enjoy and benefit from using Juked. And our goal is to just get maybe 2 to 3% of them to actually be our subscribers. And that can get us to profitability and to break even. And as we layer on fantasy and we layer on gamification and advertising sponsorships, we'll hopefully be in the point where we're making, millions.
Yeah. Looking at COVID, I imagine that's got to be causing some of the worst feelings for you, right? Like everything that's going on with their society, being a new startup, I imagine has got to be terrifying.
Horrible timing, dude. I mean, we actually, so we're doing this fundraising right now through Republic, where anyone can invest as little as $100. But we graduated from 500 Startups, which is the accelerator here in San Francisco. Basically, Y Combinator is like the golden standard for accelerators, but 500 Startups is like right there, that in the conversation with Y Combinator, and it's one of the most prestigious. Our goal was to raise, after we finished with 500 Startups. That was March, which is when the entire world shut down. So the plan was to raise back then, and we ended up postponing it completely because of COVID. Venture capital has trickled to just a small percentage of what it was before. And even in the other aspect, which people really overlook, especially in the media right now, is like everyone's like, oh, esports, it's thriving in COVID.
No one's buying anything.
No one's buying anything, and no one enjoys a broadcast where everyone's at home more than in a stadium with a roaring crowd where the players walk up and give each other a hand. No, it's not the same. League of Legends, LCS did really well, LEC did really well, but has there been a Counter-Strike major the entire COVID?
I think Valve said they're not going to either.
And they're not going to. Has there been a Dota major this entire time? No. Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, LCS, LEC, those have been doing well. There have been a bunch of online Counter-Strike leagues, but one of the communities we had the most traction with was Smash Bros.
Yeah,
there's been a grand total of like 3 interesting Smash Bros tournaments in 9 months because of COVID. So, or 7 months, whatever. So like there's this notion that like esports is doing amazing and it's the best thing ever to happen. No, it's actually really impacting some communities super negatively, fighting games, Smash Bros in particular. And viewership is actually down. People haven't been talking about that at all, but from everything I'm seeing, viewership is not up. So COVID has been tough for us, terrible timing for when we were hoping to raise, but this crowd equity campaign is going really well, and that gives us a lot of
buffer.
Thank God. Yeah. It's nice.
I mean, that's gotta be good. Looking at you as a person, I noticed that it's funny because you mentioned, it's almost like, are you feelings driven? I feels like you make a lot of, like, you seem very smart and analytical too, but it feels like a lot of it just is like, if this is the right instinct, then I go with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Has that ever hurt you? Because it feels like it hasn't, which is, I think, very lucky. But
well, I mean, I don't know, what are those charts, like the INFP or what all those like different things with like personality and mood charts. I'm definitely more on the feelings than the analytical side. I mean, I think being super, super organized was never my strong suit. It's definitely bit me in the ass. I think the worst thing the worst issue that ever happened with me with like relying too much on just like feelings and like not making sure that all the ducks were in a row was my time at Twitch. We were working on this BD deal with a esports partner, and we were going to do their premium subscription on Twitch. And, they had done premium subscriptions many years in the past, and they had driven millions, and they were willing to do it through Twitch's subscription program. And I was working on this deal. It was just me. I was like 23, 24. I was super young, never really worked on big BD deals before. I was working with their legal team back and forth. And I had assumed that Twitch was going to be willing to do this integration. It required some engineering work to do it. And we came up to like a month before the thing. And then I got like, oh, by the way, we're not going to do that. And that was maybe one of the most embarrassing things of my entire career, was like, and biggest disappointments, because it was going to make Twitch a lot of money if I had actually been able to convince people. But, I didn't do my diligence as well as I could have. Though. Yeah, it was terrible.
God.
Yeah, no fun.
Yeah, that would be awful. So you have a lot of promising things going for you in the future. I really liked having you on here. I actually only have one last question for you. I've had a lot of fun on here. I hope you did too. If you didn't, too bad. You kind of got stuck here and you're almost done. So there's not much you can do about it. So I have one question for you. It is arguably the hardest question that I might ask you today. At least that's what everyone says. So having had the experience being on the show, if you could see anyone to be on the show, who would you like to see on the show? And if you pick someone who I've had, I'll let you know.
Okay. I watched your show before, so I know that I was prepared for this question.
Oh, were you? That's cheating. God. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. That's okay.
But all of a sudden in my head, I'm like second guessing myself. But I think
you can give me a couple. Carmack. Okay.
Yeah. I think he has had extremely deep knowledge of this industry since day -1. Started as a journalist way back when, has done just about everything at ESL. The thing that was just running in my head there was like, any of those old ESL guys, I think they have got to have the most insane stories. I don't know how much they would say, but if you could interview Ralph, the CEO of ESL, I think any of those guys, because I mean they're like the esports Illuminati. Yeah. I mean seriously, like Jens Hilgers, Ralph, CEO of ESL. Alex, who went to found SK Gaming later on, all of those guys, like their tendrils go real deep. So I think they'd be really interesting, but I'll go with Carmack.
Okay. I think that's a good one. Believe it or not, I don't have any other questions for you. I loved having you on the show. You're a lot of fun to talk to. If you have any shout outs or anything, you're more than welcome to do them here. My very small audience will maybe listen to you. Hopefully they will, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I definitely was happy to jump on the show because I really like how you conduct these interviews. I like just that conversational style. It's awesome. Give Juked a try. Regardless of what esports you follow, we're going to have everything you need in one place. So juked.gg, please register for an account. When you register, you can set your favorite games and it'll curate the experience to your liking. We also have something called the Daily Digest, which sends you all of the matches happening in the esports that you care about. We just added news to the site, so we're going to start to add news to that Daily Digest in the near future. So juked.gg, if you're a fan of any esport, one esport, two esports, you want to know everything that's happening across esports, we're going to solve that for you. So give us a shout and please consider registering for an account.
I have a registered account, so you should too. Like I feel like
there you go.
That's how it goes. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate it having you on there. For everyone out there that's been the minds of media, and until next time, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Oh, hello there. I hope you enjoyed this video. So make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Shout out to all my Patreons that support me. If you're looking to support me, you can find my Patreon at patreon.com/improvblake. You can also find me streaming throughout the week at twitch.tv/improvblake.